Isaac Watts, The Improvement of the Mind. Number 4. Presume not too much upon a bright genius, a ready wit, and good parts. For this, without labor and study, will never make a man of knowledge and wisdom. This has been an unhappy temptation to persons of a vigorous and gay fancy to despise learning and study. They have been acknowledged to shine in an assembly, and sparkle in discourse upon common topics, and thence they took it into their heads to abandon reading and labor, and grow old in ignorance. But when they had lost the vivacities of animal nature and youth, they became stupid and sottish, even to contempt and ridicule. Lucidus and Scintillot are young men of this stamp. They shine in conversation. They spread their native riches before the ignorant. They pride themselves in their own lively images of fancy, and imagine themselves wise and learned. But they had best avoid the presence of the skillful and the test of reasoning, and I would advise them once a day to think forward a little with a contemptible figure they will make. What a contemptible figure they will make in age. The witty men sometimes have sense enough to know their own foible, and therefore they craftily shun the attacks of argument, or boldly pretend to despise and renounce them, because they are conscious of their own ignorance, and inwardly confess their want of acquaintance with the skill of reasoning. Number 5. As you are not to fancy yourself a learned man, because you are blessed with a ready wit, so neither must you imagine that large and laborious reading and a strong memory can denominate you truly wise. It is meditation and studious thought. It is the exercise of your own reason and judgment upon all you read that gives good sense even to the best genius, and affords your understanding the truest improvement. A boy of strong memory may repeat a whole book of Euclid, yet be no geometer, for he may not be able perhaps to demonstrate one single theorem. Memorino had learned half the Bible by heart and has become a living concordance and a speaking index to theological folios, and yet he understands little of divinity. A well-furnished library and a capacious memory are indeed of singular use toward the improvement of the mind, but if all your learning be nothing else but a mere amassment of what others have written, without a due penetration into their meaning, and without a judicious choice and determination of your own sentiments, I do not see what title your head has to true learning. Above your shelves, though you have read philosophy and theology, morals and metaphysics in abundance, and every other art and science, yet if your memory is the only faculty employed, you can justly claim no higher character than that of a good historian of the sciences. Here note, many of the foregoing advices are more peculiarly proper for those who are conceited of their abilities and are ready to entertain a high opinion of themselves. But a modest, humble youth of a good genius should not suffer himself to be discouraged by any of these considerations. They are designed only as a spur to diligence and a guard against vanity and pride. Number 6. Be not so weak as to imagine that a life of learning is a life of laziness and ease. Dare not give up yourself to any of the learned professions unless you are resolved to labor hard at study and can make it your delight and the joy of your life, according to the motto of our late Lord Chancellor King, labor ipse voluptas. It is no idle thing to be a scholar indeed. A man much addicted to luxury and pleasure, recreation and pastime, should never pretend to devote himself entirely to the sciences unless his soul be so refined that he can taste all these entertainments eminently in his closet among his books and papers. Sobrino is a temperate man and a philosopher, and he feeds upon partridge and pheasant, venison and ragoûts, and every delicacy, in a growing understanding and a serene and healthy soul, though he dines on a dish of sprouts or turnips. Longinos loved his ease, and therefore chose to be brought up a scholar. He had much indolence in his temper, and as he never cared for study, he falls under universal contempt in his profession, because he has nothing but the gown and the name. Number 7. Let the hope of new discoveries, as well as the satisfaction and pleasure of known truths, animate your daily industry. Do not think learning in general has arrived at its perfection, or that the knowledge of any particular subject in any science cannot be improved, merely because it has lain 500 or 1,000 years without improvement. The present age, by the blessing of God on the ingenuity and diligence of men, has brought to light such truths in natural philosophy and such discoveries in the heavens and the earth as seem to be beyond the reach of man. But may not there be Sir Isaac Newtons in every science? You should never despair, therefore, of finding out that which has never yet been found, unless you see something in the nature of it, which renders it unsearchable and above the reach of our faculties. Nor should a student in divinity imagine that our age has arrived at a full understanding of everything which can be known by the Scriptures. Every age since the Reformation has thrown some further light on difficult texts and paragraphs of the Bible, which had long been obscured by the early rise of Antichrist. And since there are at present many difficulties and darknesses hanging about certain truths of the Christian religion, and since several of these relate to important doctrines such as the origin of sin, the fall of Adam, the person of Christ, the Blessed Trinity, the decrees of God, etc., which do still embarrass the minds of honest and inquiring readers, and which may work for noisy controversy, it is certain there are several things in the Bible yet unknown and not sufficiently explained, and it is certain that there is some way to solve these difficulties and to reconcile these seeming contradictions. And why may not a sincere teacher of truth in the present age, by labor, diligence, study, and prayer, with the best use of his reasoning powers, find out the proper solution of those knots and perplexities which have hitherto been unsolved, and which have afforded matter for angry quarreling? Happy is every man who shall be favored of heaven to give a helping hand toward that introduction of the blessed age of light and love.